Gen Z is entering the workforce with new perspectives and expectations.
In this podcast, we're here to listen to their stories and experiences, their successes and frustrations, and help employers understand the mindset and perspectives of the up-and-coming workforce.
Employers can't dictate what their young employees find meaningful. What they can do, however, is empower them to create their own sense of purpose and authentic connections.
Our curriculum is designed to help them do exactly that. East Valley Leader Lab is committed to paving the way for more curious, engaged, and connected young professionals in the workplace. Hello, I'm Tim Eskew. This is Amanda Stradling.
Hello.
We are East Valley Leader Lab, and this is our podcast, Mind and Body at Work. If our content resonates with you, we hope you'll click on the link in the show notes for a description of our newest offer, Helping Gen Z Thrive at Work. And as always, please like, share, and or subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever it is you get your podcasts. Today's guest is Guadalupe Reynoso Jiminez. Welcome, Lupe.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
We're glad to have you here. And I'm gonna give you a little introduction, and then we'll get into a conversation.
Sounds good to me.
All right. So Guadalupe Reynoso Jiminez is Leadership Development Coordinator at Aliento, a nonprofit organization that provides support to students as well as undocumented, dacamented, and mixed status families. And we've had Aliento on the show before with Reyna last year. Lupe grew up in Maryville neighborhood of West Phoenix, where she was surrounded by a diverse and vibrant immigrant community. As a result of impactful legislation in Arizona, such as SB 1070, and being the first in her family to graduate from university, she has found a passion in working to empower the immigrant community to take up space and seek higher education to make the world more equitable for everyone. In her role, she works with Aliento's Arizona's Future Fellows to nurture their leadership so they can become change makers in their schools and communities. That's a big job. We're going to hear all about it.
Yeah, you are.
One more thing I want to point out, and Lupe knows this, is we're also going to be interviewing her supervisor from Aliento, Jorge Sanchez, will be a guest on a separate episode. Mm-hmm. So, do you want to get us started, Amanda?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay. Can you tell us about what your job at Aliento is, what some of your responsibilities are, and why you chose this job?
Of course. Thank you so much again for having me. As my little bio kind of gave away, I am Leadership Development Coordinator at Aliento. So I predominantly supervise our Arizona's Future Fellowship. I currently supervise 7 fellows from schools all across the valley. The biggest job that they have is to hold spaces in their communities and their schools to educate their peers and sort of empower them also to step up, take up space, hold more events, and really start to make room in spaces that young people, people of color, first generation students usually tend to not be in. So it's really about empowering them into that. I also work with one of our hubs, the GCU Canyon Dreamers at GCU, where they do the same thing. They host events at their campus, a lot of which are more social, just to bring people together. I think we live in a time where we're very isolated. It feels like we're very much separate from everybody all the time, and especially in college, such an important time. It's pivotal for students to find their communities and find their people. So we work with them as well to bring those safe spaces there. And yeah, I think I've known about Aliento and been involved with them since I was a senior in high school, so that would be around 2019. One of my best friends was a fellow at the time, and he kind of started making me go to all of his events and going to spaces with Aliento to incorporate myself into it. And, you know, I had always been interested in the area of like policy, advocacy, activism, specifically when it came to education and immigration. So Aliento was really the space where I felt like as a young person, I was able to nurture my own leadership. And I stuck around. I became a fellow when I was up in Flagstaff at NAU. And then I graduated in 2023 and decided why not give back and be the supervisor that I had at that time and mentor the future leaders of the state.
Fantastic. The schools that you are mentoring and supervising, What age range are those schools?
We work with high school and college students, so anywhere between 15 to, I've had fellows who are 26 years old. So long as they're within like their undergraduate degrees in high school, we just want any student to come in. I feel like leadership looks so different depending on the person, and even if it's a high school freshman who's barely wanting to get in touch with their leadership, what better time to foster it than when they're just getting started?
That's great. I think you said GCU, which is a college.
Yes, so that's a university. It's a private university in West Phoenix, but we've also worked with students from ASU, Pima Community College, the U of A, all of those schools as well.
Great.
And you use the word spaces a lot, creating spaces, finding a space, holding a space. Yes. How do you talk about that with new people coming into the program?
I think the word space, we use it kind of because it's so broad. I think especially when you talk about leadership or activism, people immediately think to large demonstrations, protests or sit-ins, things like that are very high stakes, very, high risk, all of that stuff. Yeah. And it can be intimidating for young leaders, especially younger students and especially those that are directly impacted. So by saying spaces, it's like it can be during a class period. It could be during lunch. It could be after church when folks are just kind of together and mingling. Yeah. These are small spaces that allow for the word to spread, for people to become educated or uneducated, and to really start to spread those spaces to then they can potentially become larger scale areas where students can really thrive and continue to advocate for change.
That's great. Excellent. And it doesn't have to be very formal, right?
Yeah, I think some of the most change-making opportunities happen on the day-to-day, on the educating somebody on opening their mind to a different type of opinion or opportunity or experience. So it can be at any moment. This could be a space where things like that happen as well.
Yes. That was a word that we kind of used when we were starting out with this season in the podcast in particular. We wanted to have a space for newer workers to voice their experience and their work life and talk about their passions, their well-being, their struggles, and help build some better alignment between them and their supervisors. And so, we thought that this podcast could be a great space.
It is perfect. Yeah.
Definitely. So your friend introduced you to Aliento in high school, right? Was Aliento your first job?
Yeah, they were my first job, my first technically like internship sort of thing, because I volunteered in the 2020 election to just educate voters on some of the issues that were a priority. So it was like my first real introduction into what it meant to have some sort of like responsibilities that also made an income, I feel. Yeah. So it was, as a 17, 18-year-old student, it was super impactful because I was like, wow, I can, get paid to do work I really love and to impact people that I care about. So it really shaped then when I look for further jobs or things in the future, like that this is always something that I want to hold dear to myself, that I always want to do work or be in spaces where I'm able to impact and feed my soul almost too. Yes. I think I wouldn't want to waste my life in a job that doesn't make me feel good about what I'm doing.
I think that's wonderful that you found that out the gate in your working life.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people don't get that opportunity right away.
Exactly.
So that's really great. Have you had any other employers so far?
I have through other internship opportunities and things like that. All of whom I think are very similar to the spaces that I'm in right now and the job that I currently have, where it's very much like very activism and advocacy focused within the same issues of immigration and education, or just in general legislation and policy. I think, again, that's an area that's very important to me and where a lot of my interests lie. So it's all been around the same general topics.
So you've always felt a lot of alignment with the work you choose?
Yes, which has been very unique, I feel like, for even a lot of my peers and, my friends that are also in that same sort of era in their life that they're trying to figure out and trying different things to see if that's where they fit in, and they're still struggling to find it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Do you feel like your intention in working with aligning with your values is common, or is that a unique thing?
I think it's more common than it used to be. I think especially with our generation, we're kind of breaking away from this like structure of you go to college, you get a job that pays, you know, the mortgage, food on the table, and you just kind of make your life until you retire.
Yep. And you stay with that same company.
Exactly.
too.
Like for years and years and years. Whereas I think I've seen a lot more within our generation or like my peers where there is maybe not necessarily right off the bat because post-grad, your big thing is getting a job, paying your loans, doing all of that, but always having that foundation of like, am I satisfied here? Am I fulfilled here? If not, I'm going to do something else. I think there isn't that pressure to stick around when you aren't necessarily feeling fulfilled or anything like that. And I think that that's what I admire about my generation, that we're allowing ourselves to do the work that we want to do, not the work we think we should do or are being told to do by our parents or things like that. So I think that it's more common, but still kind of uncommon because everything's really expensive. So ultimately right now we're just trying to make ends meet, and it feels like we're being forced back into that box.
Yep. Economically.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. You know, there was more pressure to kind of get the job that you're supposed to get when I was growing up, and I always knew that I was going to go to college and be a business major, and I went to college and I was a business major, and I hated it. And it took me a year and a half to transfer into, you know, another area that I loved, and it went great from there. But so, you know, making that choice at the outset, I think, is a positive thing, a step forward.
Yeah, it saves a lot of time because I did the same thing. I thought I was going to be a lawyer since I was in like middle school, and that was always my area up until, you know, my third year of undergrad. I took a constitutional law class and I loved it.
Really?
But I hated the actual practice of law. And I was like, what am I going to do? I've spent my whole life really focused on this idea. And it wasn't until I started to really think about the diversity of even studying, say, like law, that you don't have to be a lawyer. You can work within the legal field but not be an attorney. And I think that we're also finding different types of jobs within the things that we enjoy that are new and exciting. And I think that that is helping a lot of folks as well to find where they fit in.
A lot more fluidity, right?
Yeah.
That's great. So what we're doing in this season is talking to people like you that are just entering the workforce and, you know, really getting your perspective. So that's a little lead into this next question. So tell us a little bit about what you've noticed about the different people that you've worked for as you've been entering the workforce in a couple of different positions.
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned earlier, for the most part, they've all been very similar, where they're very much like experts in their field. They're very educated on the subject matter. They have a lot of experience in this particular space, say in like advocacy or in policy and systems and things like that. I am an avid learner. I love to learn, so I'm drawn towards people that are willing to answer questions and like really want to dig deeper into like the whys of things. So I think that that's always been a common thing throughout my life. I think I have had, you know, employers or managers and things like that that maybe have been more corporate, where it's very, you know, black or white, point A to point B, and I'm not necessarily like that. I like to, again, like dig into it and the why, and it's not black or white. There's a million colors in the middle, things like that. So I tend to struggle when it's very much like rigid. So that's where I have some difficulty. But for the most part, it's been people that are just passionate about the work that they're doing too, and that permeates down. And I think when you have folks at the top that are super passionate about the work that they're doing, it fuels the employees and even down to the interns and volunteers, because it just fosters an environment where everybody's there because they care and love for the work.
That's great. I love it. Care is kind of contagious, right?
Yeah. It's so easy for somebody to show that they care about the work, and it makes somebody be like, okay, I want to do it too. Because if you're stuck in a space where you barely even want to be there, and the person at the top doesn't want to be there either, you're not going to want to stick around.
No.
So it's very important for those at the top to really continue to foster that that care.
Have you found that the organizations and the people that you work for expect you to kind of adapt to the way we do things around here, or have they been empathetic about, you know, you wanting to do things a different way? How's that mix been for you? How's that experience been?
I think that's been the toughest part, honestly.
Really?
Yeah. I do feel like there has been flexibility, and it's been really good, I feel, because it allows for both parties to adapt to it, right? Because, of course, like, one way or another, you're either going to push people out because you're being, like, too strict, or it's going to be a mess, and the
You
company
have
or
to
the
have
organization
some
isn't going to work.
structure.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I have found that there has been that flexibility. I think ultimately it does end up like having to be like what is asked of at the start, so that, you know, more run-of-the-mill sort of process or system, but it's an easier flow into it rather than like from one day to the next you're gonna do this and it's gonna be A and B and that's it. So that's been very helpful, because then it doesn't feel overwhelming. Also, this is my first job. I'm 22. I'm figuring things out. So it's very helpful to be like, okay, I know where I have to end up, but I have the flexibility to learn as I go and have the support of my supervisors and everything to get to that point as well.
Can you think of a specific example where, you know, an expectation was set and you were struggling with it a little bit and you were able to get that flexibility?
Yeah, I think right now we're transitioning at the organization to be much more focused on, say, like KPIs, numerical goals. We've always had numerical goals, but it's
Key
been like
performance indicators.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes, yeah.
We meet the goals, and it's always been that way. But now there's benchmarks, and there's like by this specific date we have to be here. So it's about rethinking of like, I know I was gonna get to that point already, but now I have to make sure that I get to that point by this point. And it's been tough because we've had to adjust the work, we've had to adjust the way we forecast and we plan, and I personally have been struggling in it, but I've had a lot of conversations with my supervisor, with Jorge, about like, hey, I'm really struggling to get to this, or really struggling to find a way to make this fit with the way that my mind works or the way that I work. So we've found ways to meet in the middle, like these are non-negotiables, we have to get there, but let's figure out how we can get there. So I think that that's been a very present thing that's been going on right now, but I think that again with that flexibility and understanding, it's been a lot easier to manage.
I think
Good
that
example.
flexibility it's so important in any organization, just for feeling like you have some respect and dignity, like that the key indicators aren't more important than you as an individual, that the numbers aren't the bottom line. It's not all that matter.
Yeah, and I think that that's another very tricky part, right? Especially from folks at the top, because you're thinking about like, we have to be able to show that we are a reputable organization. We're servicing the community that we say we are, and that's super important.
Yeah.
But it's also really hard then to balance the like humanity component, especially at an organization like Aliento, where we focus on, you know, areas when it comes to like mental health or just like helping folks through really tough times. Ultimately, it goes down to servicing the person. And we see it all the time, how things start off as like servicing the person, and then ultimately the person just becomes a number and a statistic. And that also can take away sort of the drive in wanting to do the work. So it is really important, right, to find that middle ground of like, we do have to show for our work, but also remember that these are human beings, both at the, you know, worker and employee level, but also at the folks that we're servicing.
Absolutely.
What I'm hearing when you talk about that is the culture at Aliento is strong, right? And the people that work there take it on, right? It's become your standard.
Yeah.
And that's a really positive sign for an organization, I think.
Yeah, and I think the fact too that the organization is run by folks that are directly impacted in one way or another. It's not just a job, it's their lives. They can't just go home and switch that off, because they go home and they're going through the same things. So it's an added sort of layer to it, where it could be a good and a bad, because if you're directly impacted and you're doing work that you care about, it drives your work and you're passionate about it and you're going to get it done. But also you don't get that break, because you can't go home and separate from it. Because, you know, especially when we're talking about issues regarding immigration, you know, you're working with, say, for example, our Cultiva department, they're working with young elementary and middle school aged kids who are talking about their own personal fears because of things that are going on. They are, you know, our coordinators can't go home and turn that off, because they're going home and they're having the same exact fears too. So it's tricky in that case too, because we wear it both when it comes to at work and at home. So then we have to find a way to still care for ourselves and recharge ourselves to still be able to give our all when we go back to the office the next day, or to be the support system that our family needs.
absolutely.
Great.
So you gave us a great example of, very integral to the work, the way the goals are set and finding ways to, feeling you had some flexibility to find ways to make that work. Is there something about just being in the workplace, this change in your life that you have found intimidating or that puts you off, things that you weren't expecting or just annoy you?
Yeah, I think I struggle like a lot when it comes to like imposter syndrome. And even though I have been involved with the organization since I was, 17, 18, and I know all the people there and they've been my people for so long, I feel like stepping into like an actual job, I was like, I don't know if I actually am capable of this. Like, what do you mean I have to manage 6 or 7 high school and college students and make sure that they complete 3 events and that they're organizing students to take to the Capitol and that they're doing all of these things? Like, I was like, at that time I was 21. I was like, I can't do all of this. Like, I just graduated college. I just moved back home. So you internalize a lot of that like self-doubt of maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe, somebody who had more experience could have done a better job. So I think that was the biggest thing that was intimidating. Also, I think working with such educated people and experts in the field, like that fear of like saying something that's like wrong. But I think like I've learned and throughout not just like the job, but like in school and everything is, being wrong is a learning opportunity. So it opens the door for a further conversation or for you to get something out of it as well. So I've switched that sort of thing of like not being afraid of being wrong, but just like seeing that as an opportunity to learn from it. And I think that's been the hardest part of it all. I think given that I work with an organization I've known for so long, there's not a lot of other things that intimidate me other than that internalized fear and doubt. But I can see from like my peers and like my best friends and things like that, it's similar to that too. Just that crazy shift from going from academia and academic validation to going straight into the workforce. And that being so incredibly different to what we had done for the past, 20, 22 years of our life.
Also, you don't get grades back immediately on every task that you complete at work.
Yeah.
Like you don't get the continual feedback. So that can make you feel a little uncertain.
You have to wait until your performance evaluation. And then you're like at that performance evaluation, everything is very much up in the air and it can be scary, especially if you have like supervisors that aren't giving you feedback as you go or aren't sort of like showing your progression or at least like telling you if something's wrong, telling you ahead of time and waiting till the last minute. So it can be very, very, very overwhelming. It's very different.
Can you, if there were other people that were going to be in your position entering the workforce for the first time, can you give a brief piece of advice to help them overcome that barrier?
Yeah, I give this piece of advice to my high school seniors that are going into college.
Okay.
But you're not the first one. You're not going to be the last one. And pretty much everybody your age is going through the same thing. It's so crazy. Again, I think it goes with like our own self-isolation that like we tend to think of like I'm the only person going through this really tough time or I'm the only person who's ever gone through this. And it becomes isolating and it becomes overwhelming, stressful, anxiety inducing, all of that. And I think when you remember that you're not the first person that's going through this, nor the last, it reminds you that like you're going to be okay. It's going to be tough and it's going to take a lot of work maybe to get accustomed to a new space or a new type of work or anything like that, but it's not going to be the end of the world. And if you don't like it, you're not stuck with it. You can change it at all times. Of course, there's extenuating circumstances that might limit that, but you always have the ability to say, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to try something new. So I think it's always remembering that we're not stuck and there's always change and we're not the first people to go through these things.
Such great takeaways. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's interesting, I think, my generation, we wouldn't have had that thought that, I can just switch to something else. And it's just an interesting difference, right, in the new people entering the workforce, that they feel that power.
Yeah.
And I think it's a healthy thing. Yeah. And we're figuring out, I think organizations are figuring out how to channel that power.
Yeah.
Right? Benefit from that power.
Exactly. You don't want people in a space that don't want to do the work.
Yeah.
Right.
In the end, you get the right people for the right job.
Exactly.
Even if there's some switching around
Yeah.
and some uncertainty
Yeah.
while everyone's finding their place. But yeah, you don't want a person that isn't passionate doing the work, especially in areas where you are. It has to be an issue that they care about.
Yeah, because it's tough work. It really is tough. So you have to be in it. And if you're not, it's not going to go well.
Yep, definitely. Are there things that you hear about working or finding work from your peers and colleagues that surprise you?
I think just hearing like how hard it is to actually like find work right now, especially work that you're really in alignment with. Again, I'm really lucky that I sort of fell into this space since I was in high school. But I think that that's the biggest thing that I hear that surprises me and scares me for when that next step comes for me. It's like how hard it truly is to find, one, a job to begin with, but two, a job that truly is fulfilling for you. I think it's hard, especially for ambitious people or people that really want to like do something for themselves. We tend to go into an area or a job and immediately want to just do everything. But it's not like that. It's not like in school where you can do a bunch of extra things on a paper or a project to really stand out.
Yeah.
At work, you're very confined to what you can and can't do. And that could be really tough as well.
Yep.
So I think that's surprising, both that I hear and see also just in a day-to-day.
Yeah.
Can I do a follow-up?
Yep.
What was your plan when you were in college and you knew it was on the horizon? I'm going to graduate. I need something to do.
Yeah.
How did you approach that? Because you've ended up in a good place. So how did that work for you? What was your plan?
Well, my original plan was, so I was graduating in 3 years. I was going to take 1 year off, work as like a paralegal or something, study for the LSAT, and then go to law school, be an attorney. That was the plan.
Plan A.
Yeah. And then I was like, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. So I had to rethink it all. And I think what ended up happening was like, I want to be at a job that I care about and that is fulfilling, that allows me to continue to explore who I am and what I want to do. And that's how I ended up here. It so happened that this job opening opened up over the summer when I graduated. And I was like, that's perfect. Because it's work I know I love and I care about. And I know that because I'm not going to be stressed out because I hate my job, I'll be able to do things to really figure out who I am. And then I ended up, now I'm, closing off the second cohort and I'm starting the planning to go back to school. I'm looking into dual JD master's programs to work within, the area of policy and advocacy as it relates to immigration and specifically like first generation immigrants, things like that, and policy, all of that nerdy stuff that I love. But it really helped me realize I still want to go to law school. That was something that I knew I still wanted to do. But I'm like, I don't want to be a lawyer, so let me add something to it that incorporates both the insights that you can get from a legal degree, but also with the application of what it actually means for the day-to-day person or the person that I want to impact. So I got to that point. So now the scary part again is studying for those prereq exams and figuring out where I'm going to go. But it's helped, I think, to be happy where I'm at, because then it gives me the time to be able to really think through what comes next for me.
That's fabulous. Mm-hmm. Do you think that that's something, the room to grow and do new things is something that a lot of your peers are also looking for?
Yeah, I think of my best friend right now. Well, both of them actually, because they're pretty much doing the same thing where they're in their first jobs. They're thinking about whether they see just potentially getting promoted within the job that they're in, or if potentially they want to try something else. My best friend got a degree in biology. She's working as a lab manager at a community college. She's thinking about potentially going to law school to become an environmentalist lawyer.
Wow.
So it's very much a weird and confusing time. And I think also for a lot of us, we decided what we were going to study at 18. And we stuck through it, but then it wasn't until graduation that we were like, oh, maybe not. So I think that the job market and work is what's allowing us to really filter through what we do and don't want to do to ultimately find that end goal.
That's great.
Yeah, I think that's a good insight. there can be that dilemma of, I don't know exactly what I want to do when I grow up, and it can cause people to freeze, right, and not do anything.
Yeah.
But one of the things we teach in leadership is, moving forward into uncertainty. So one way to do that is to, all right, I'll try this. If it doesn't work out, I'll move in a different direction.
Yep. That's another thing we do with our fellows too. Our big thing is agency and resiliency. It's like, how confident are you in, overcoming something despite a setback? Because we go through that every day, from, waking up, getting in your car and realizing you don't have gas, to something as large as like waking up one day and realizing you studied a degree that you don't want to pursue any longer.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to issues within advocacy and policy changing, you're going to be hit with so many hurdles, and it's going to be so hard, especially in the times that we're in, the conversations that are being had, and how it's impacting our community specifically. So it's really about working with the students to figure out, are they willing and capable of saying like, okay, this didn't work, but let me do this. Or I was told this and it really hurt me, but I'm going to take that and do something positive about it.
Yeah.
And it's things that we can take to our day-to-day lives. It's not just about change making.
Exactly. Just as much about your home life as your work life.
Exactly.
One of the things we focus on in our courses is we call it breakdowns. And the very first important principle about breakdowns, and it's just simply when things don't go as planned, is to just take responsibility for it.
Yep.
Okay, it happened. Now I've got to do something about it. I've got to do something different. It's a mood issue, right? It's so easy to be in the, this shouldn't have happened. I wish this wouldn't have. Why does this always happen to me? It's just so less productive. But it can take. It's a element of maturity.
Yeah.
And a lot of young people, I think, need.
We grow into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you're not aware of it, if you're not exposed to it, right?
Yeah.
So, and we teach not just young people, and it's an insight for a lot of people. It was an insight for me, 50 years old. Oh, I could be positive about that. All right, I'll give that a try.
Yeah.
We call them opening or closing moods. Like, does it create new possibilities, or is it closing off new possibilities? Is my mind opening that door or closing it? And it doesn't mean you have a control over the whole situation, but you can have control over what you're going to try to do next.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing, right? It's taking that opportunity and doing something, or realizing you can't do anything about it. Because that's another thing we fall into too, like feeling we have to be in control of everything and everything has to have a solution. And sometimes that's just not the case.
Right.
Yep. Definitely.
I'm curious, when you're not at work and you're out with your peers doing the things you like to do, your peers that are also new to the workforce, what do you guys talk about? What's the smack about these places we work at? Did I just date myself?
Maybe.
Yeah.
We still use the term once in a
Oh,
while. Don't worry. I think it's hilarious how much like outings with friends actually just like have to do with talking about work.
Really?
I feel like the vast majority, like if I go out to dinner with my best friend, the first 60% of our conversation is going to be about work and what happened and how we're feeling and what's making us angry and what's making us happy and all of that. And then the last little bit, it's like, oh, how is wedding planning? And, what did you do during the week? But the vast majority of our conversations have to do with work, I think, because it just takes so much time of our lives. So it only makes sense. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the conversations are just about like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know if I'm happy. Like, I'm thinking about what that next step is, like going back to school and what that means, because it's not just like, oh, I'm going to enroll in some classes. There's pre-work that has to go into it. So a lot of it is very much, I think, like future thinking of what comes next and where we are and what that means for us. But of course, we tend to spill the tea, as we would say. What are the things, like who's annoying us this time? And what's the one thing that really got under our skin this week? But I think work is such a big topic of conversation in any outing or hangout that I have with folks my age.
Can you think of an example of a common thing that gets under people's skin at work these days?
Yeah, I think I'm going back to our lovely key performance indicators, because that was such a new thing for me. And something that my best friend also has talked about a lot, but just talking about how, like, I don't know how I'm going to get to that, and just getting so frustrated because like, I have to get to this number by this date, and I feel like the world is falling apart because I'm not going to get to it. And really going through, like, okay, let's workshop it for a little bit. From an outsider perspective, what can we do? And she's gone through the same thing as well with her own personal goals at work. She also got a new supervisor that was just not a right fit for the school and the work. And that was a big thing too, just talking about, like, oh, this is what she did this time. And I had to talk about this and report her for that. So a lot of that is just talking about, in her case, just unhappy relationships within, interpersonal things. For me, it was more like, I got these goals to meet and I'm freaking out because I'm not getting there, so help me. So it's very diverse. I feel like we're all having our own little struggles.
Interesting. I'm putting myself in the place of a manager in an organization who's got a bunch of these young workers, and listening to this interview. And when they hear that you're talking about what you're going to do next, they're horrified. And then they hear you talking about, how am I going to meet that goal? And they're like, yes, that's what they should be talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, it's like our processing. We start with the freak out and just dropping it all. But ultimately it's, okay, now that we have that, here's what it means. And here are my tangible next steps to get to that point. Because ultimately that's what matters, right? So it's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster.
Do you feel like having a good social network to kind of unpack these things together is valuable?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's crazy. I have a younger sister who's 3 years younger than me. She's in undergrad right now, so she has a very different worldview. She does have, like, a part-time job and stuff, but it's not the same. So when I talk to her about struggles at work, she's like, oh, like, I empathize with you, but, like, I don't really get it. Whereas when I talk to my two best friends who are, in their first jobs and all of that, we can, like, really dig into it down to, like, the corporate talk and, like, what specific things and intricacies within, like, organizational structure and, like, what it means and where we fall into it and all of that. Like, we can just have more fruitful conversations because we understand it a lot more. And I think ultimately that helps process things a lot more, but also it helps with those next steps and, like, action items of, like, really figuring out, okay, like, having somebody who understands because they're in a similar space, but doesn't really know the day-to-day because it's different type of work, but that can still offer that insight of, like, I don't totally understand it, but based on me and what I'm doing, here's what could work. So let's try that out. So it's very helpful to have people that are going through the same things.
I think you've brought up isolation a few times, and I think that network that you've built with your friends is a really healthy way to kind of combat that. Yeah. And it sounds like a really productive way, too, that you guys are really helping each other make these choices and cope with these challenges. Yep. And it kind of goes back to what you're saying to your high school students that you coach, that they're not the first ones, and finding connection with others that can validate that, I'm not alone in this struggle. Yeah. I think that's so important.
Community is so important in every facet and aspect of our lives, and I think that's why it's important to have a community for pretty much every component of what makes you you, because you always need support in one way or another. And I think having that, then it allows you to also share and spread that knowledge and the compassion to others as well, because again, we tend to think we're the only ones going through these things, but we really aren't. So what better way to make somebody's day than to tell them, like, I've been there, or I'm currently there. You're not alone. Let's talk about it, or let's try to figure something out. If there is a solution, if not, quit your job. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But I feel like a lot of people struggle with that too.
Do you think that this generation, the world is always changing, right? But the internet, in a way, it connects us more and can help us form these connections and communities that are important. But in a way, it's sucking us in our own little bubble right here, right? And so sometimes I feel like right now the world's a little more isolating than it has been in the past. I don't know. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. I think, in school we learned about, echo chambers. And I learned about echo chambers when it came to political ideology, right?
Yes.
But that extends beyond that. It's just what networks do we sort of like fall within and we don't step outside of. And I think it's very detrimental, very, very detrimental, because we then have a very narrow view and mindset of the world, our experiences, and where we fit in. I think that also limits our like capability and our ability to progress and move upwards, because we only see upward mobility in one way. And we only talk to the same people, and our networks just kind of are around the same people over and over and over, so you're not really getting anything out of it after a while.
Yeah.
So it's taking away the, meeting a different person with a different point of view or different work experience and learning from them. And it's causing us to sort of just think that the only people that are right are the people that we're surrounding ourselves by. When I think sometimes, it's great to have friends that you're always with and talk to about these things, but you tend to also just feed off of each other and give each other the same advice, and sometimes that's not fruitful. So it's important to step outside and just have a real conversation with people once in a while too, because so much can be misconstrued virtually as well.
Wow, that's fabulous advice. I think diversity is really important if we're going to get feedback that is going to be productive in our lives.
Yeah.
We don't want to just hear our own ideas.
Yeah, because if you just get the same thing repeated back to you, you're going to believe it, and maybe it's wrong. 9 times out of 10, it's wrong. We tend to be our worst enemies sometimes. So that's why it's so important to have people that are willing to be like, hey, let's think about that differently. Or maybe that's not necessarily correct, but here's what we can do about it. Because that, again, allows for growth. And I think ultimately, as new, fresh out of, school students into the workforce, we have to get that understanding and that learning of also we're green to it all. We have to struggle a little bit and figure it out, but learn from people that have been there in the past.
That's great.
I'm going to use that as a segue to go back to something, because when you were talking about these conversations with your peers, I think you said in the beginning, not all of them are working, right? Mm-hmm. You have people in your circle that are maybe looking for work or doing something else. Is there any benefit for those people to be in a network with people that are already working? I mean, how do you see that play out? Do they get discouraged, or do they get ideas? What do you think happens?
I think it's a mix of both. I feel like that's my response to everything, but it's so complex. But I think if it's people that are doing work that you are sort of into or within the sector that you want to be into, it can be very helpful. Because connections. Networking is so important. I feel like that's the biggest thing I've learned being now a working person. Your network and who you know is so important. So it can be very helpful in that way. I think it could also be kind of discouraging because you start to compare yourself. You're like, how come this person was able to find a job immediately and I have been, applying for 6 months and haven't even heard back? I think that's where the biggest sort of discouragement comes from, especially just that comparison.
Yeah.
Most of the folks that I know that aren't working right now, it's because they're prepping to go back to school. So they're studying full time and they have, the privilege to be able to just, not work. So it's a very different experience. But those that are looking for work, it's very much just frustration. And it's I'm happy for you, but I'm really struggling to find something that works for me or just that would take me in, because at this point I've heard from folks that it took them maybe 3 or 4 months of applying to a job to even get an interview back. So it's
I know
dire.
Some people like that have applied for 6 months without getting very many callbacks at all.
It's hard. It's very scary.
And that comparison game is such a threat to your well-being.
Yes.
And it does kind of make you want to withdraw a little bit, when you see other people that you perceive are doing better than you are. It
goes back to social media too, because that's where I struggled too when I was, before deciding what my next step was. You would see all these people in social media posting about the jobs they were getting right after graduation. I had a friend who majored in math and she was getting a job at an accounting firm in Chicago and was going to get paid 6 figures. And you're like, what about me, right? And so then we start to really be like, oh, maybe this isn't what I want to do, but because we're seeing other people do things that we think are going to be better. So it's a dark circle that it takes a lot to sort of step out from and realize like, hey, that's them, not me. I know what I want and what I have to do. So let me take the steps towards that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. Believe it or not, we're about at the end of
Oh,
our
we
time,
are.
so I'm going to start to wrap
Yeah,
up.
let's wrap it up.
Ready?
Did go by a lot faster than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always does.
Yeah.
So we like to give our guests, one last chance. If there's, so we're speaking to young people who are entering the workforce and the people who are managing those people, and we're trying to improve that dialogue. Anything else you'd like to share?
Biggest thing I think is that meeting in the middle. I think we both have a lot to learn from each other. Even when we're talking about like Gen Zs, older Gen Zs are the ones that are in the supervisory roles, and we got the younger Gen Zs like myself stepping into the workforce. So I think it's understanding that although we may be like 2 or 3 years apart, we're very drastically different. And we have to find a way to find that middle ground, because if we are very either end stuck on one side or another, we're never going to get anywhere. And we have to be able to empower each other. It's a give and take. It's a back and forth. So really being willing to have those conversations and adapt is really crucial. And also just patience. I think we're, especially coming from a person barely entering, I've appreciated that the folks that are, supervising me and managing me have been really patient and understanding and willing to teach, but also willing to be stern when it has to be. So I think patience goes a very long way.
So many great takeaways. Thank you so much, Lupe.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here. I hope that there was a couple things that you could take away from this, but it
So
was an
many.
intriguing conversation.
Absolutely. We're trying to understand, what it's like in today's workforce to just be entering the workforce. Talking to people with not very much experience, you come across as somebody that has a lot of experience for
Yes.
the stage that you're at. I think Aliento gets some credit for that.
Yeah.
We know that's a wonderful organization with you a part of it as well. So thanks so much for being willing to be our guest.
Of course. Thank you so much.
All right. And to our listeners, we want to thank you. We'll see you next time. Be well and keep moving.
This has been Mind and Body at Work with the East Valley Leader Lab. Please click on the link in the show notes for a description of our newest offer, Helping Gen Z Thrive at Work. This is our embodiment training to help new young workers integrate into your organization.
As always, if this content resonates with you and your cares, please like, share, and/or subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever it is you get your podcast. Be well and keep moving.